It's one of those conundrums. And yet we know we are there. And we are a foot away from entering fully. And when we see Christ, we shall see him as he is, and we shall know ourselves as we are. And one of the things about this is equally the world knows us to be the children of God, and those that despise us and hate us and cruelly treat us shall stop their mouths in the day, because they'll stand there, and we shall not be with them in that judgment hall on the last day. And they will just look around, where is he gone, where's she gone, why isn't she here, why isn't he there? They won't be able to speak. Their own condemnation, greater than Adam's, shall take them. To think that Adam's condemnation and his mind was so great because he'd never entered into this before, and he was standing before Almighty God. But he was such a hard-faced, Adam was so hard-faced, that he could reply against God. Who art thou that repliest against God? Hey, I'm Adam. I'm Adam. I'm the man. The woman had a more tender conscience, owned what she did, and then said, what was it? Eventually, serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Do you know, I do wonder sometimes if the pair of them, because there's two of them standing there before the serpent, had actually mulled over the tree, whether or not how to take of the tree, what benefits, what is hidden from us, curiosity catching them, and then talking it over, to do it, preparing beforehand. And then of course the serpent comes along, has something to attach to, and beguiles the woman. He probably listened to the pair of them speaking. For we don't know how long Adam and Eve stood in their first position. Could have been days, could have been weeks, could have been years. I would imagine it would be days. Man is very restless. But yeah, I think it would be fair to say that they conversed with one another about this tree, kept looking at this tree. You know, I fancy that tree there. I fancy it. It's good for the eye, you know, tantalising the eyes. What is it? You know, what belongs to that tree? Look at it. Of course, the tempter then came along and put the cherry on the top of the cake. And she did become beguiled. She started it, but the serpent ended it. But Adam wasn't beguiled. He wasn't. Anyways, as we began, the theme is history, and it's quite disturbing in our day. This is April 2020, 26th of April 2020, the year 2020. Now in March of this year, the British government was forced by the British public to come out of the EU. Now, we were never in the EU as such. Okay, but putting that to one side a moment, to come out of the EU, the British government was so angered and embarrassed that it took to going on the attack, the offensive. You see, the British government has always been, and this is going down the years, the eons, the ages, toffee-nosed, upper crust, disregarding all persons that are not of its ilk. It's arrogant and loathsome, and it doesn't mind declaring that in the past. It's brutal. Autocracy is with it. 1911 Parliamentary Act signed by Churchill and others, declaring to the British people that this country is run on autocratic lines. Now, why did they have that signed off? To be declared to the people that it is run, not on democratic lines, but autocratic lines. Because the people had taken on the government. In 1910, the people had said, we don't want government. We're not voting for government. Oh, you'll have a handful. But it was such a situation that Parliament had to organise another general election. And guess what? Guess what? Think about it. Government is defeated over its own established polling system. People didn't vote. Okay? That is, again, the vast majority didn't vote. Alright, you get the odd one or two voting here and there. You say, let's say 200 or 300 people. Alright? Now then, so what does it do? Comes back, has another one, another general election, and all of a sudden, the vast majority of people have voted. Now you can work that out for yourself. It's common sense, isn't it? Reason says that it was rigged. But the people didn't turn out in their thousands to vote. Okay? And this has been established elsewhere. Okay, over time. And so, in order to get back and to point out to the British people, in 1911, they openly declared to the British people, listen up. You are under an autocratic government. Here it is, we've signed it off, held it up, there you go. And that remains. It has always been an autocratic government, but at that time they wanted to point out to their people, listen, you lot. You will do as we say. We won't do as you say. And if we do as you say, it is only because we see benefit for ourselves in it. Sadly, people, when they see government giving them something, they say, oh, isn't it a good government? No, it's not. It's doing it for its own self-interest. And what they tend to do with most things is to apply them for a certain period of time and then sneak them out. Sneak them back out. NHS absolutely opposed. Now this is one of many things. Absolutely opposed. The government of the day, Churchill's government and the rest, were opposed to the NHS being established. A National Health Service. Absolutely opposed. We'll not give the peasants, the plebs as they say, a health service. No, the health service belongs to us. Oh no, let the plebs die, let the plebs suffer continuously. Well, why should we? Why should those people down there? And when the miners, of course, came out on strike to push and push, Churchill sent an order to the troops to go and shoot the miners. The troops wouldn't do that. To cut a long story short, Churchill gave in to the miners to have a National Health Service after the war. The National Health Service came, we paid for it, quite naturally, that's fine, for a national insurance. And then what did the government do later on? And it was the same with the benefit system. Said, oh, haven't we done well? Oh, we've given you this, we've given you that. Oh, yes. Like the National Health Service is free at the point of service, we gave you this. Oh, you see what I mean? They do this sort of thing. They oppose and oppose and oppose. And when they can't win, then they give it for a period of time and praise themselves up as though they've given it, and then they get rid of it. They seek to get rid of it. Now with the NHS, they're seeking, since then, and it's not that long ago, you know, it's not that long ago it was set up, but there is, from its inception, for the British government to dismantle the NHS, to get rid of it, sell it off. Now, it has only become a lot clearer in the past few years, okay, to get rid of this free service that it isn't free because we pay for it, alright? It's free to the foreigners who come in, the immigrants. That's another subject. Pardon me. Okay? And why do you think there are hospitals that have been refurbished at millions and millions of pounds? Others haven't. Others have, at our expense. New hospitals being built, and the NHS at the present time being praised for its professionalism, because there is the final push at this time on the 26th of April, the year 2020, to get shut of the NHS altogether, to go into private hands. And people are asleep to the understanding of this. This is why it's being praised, and it must be getting into the skin, under the skin of hundreds and hundreds of people that have been maltreated by the NHS, and the millions of compensation that are yearly paid out from the NHS insurance company, of which then the insurance premiums go up. These people must be absolutely beside themselves, crying out. But the government said, oh, it's a fine service, it's doing well, everybody praise it, and the ignorant people praise it. The sad thing about it is the ignorant praise it because the government tells them to praise it. But when they go to the hospital, they find out, oh, hang on a minute, I shouldn't have been praising this. Unless, of course, you get a good hospital. Sorry, not a good hospital, but you get a good doctors and nursing staff. I mean, there are some good ones. And the point is here also, is that once a person goes in and he finds this group of good doctors and nurses, they come out and say, oh, bless her, oh yeah, brilliant, brilliant. You go in a second time, what the hell is going on here? But they're always pushing, you see, that first instance when they get, these people, members of the public, when they first get good treatment. And then Joe Bloggs, let's put it this way, they go in, let's say they go in on the 26th of April 2020, okay? Go into A&E. This man or woman goes in. And they're getting fair treatment, they're getting professional treatment, and they go out. The next cubicle down, the man comes in on the 27th, say, of April 2020, and he has an appalling service. But the man himself who got the good service will praise the NHS. The man here who didn't will not praise the NHS. So who was right? Well, the simple fact is that you don't praise the NHS. We just take the NHS as it is. Because it is offensive to both parties. If you praise the NHS, then you're offending the person who has suffered by the NHS, and there's some terrible things that people have suffered. They've had their wrong legs taken off. They've been put into comas. They've had their eyes missing. Limbs, again, missing. They've been murdered by the NHS. Government implemented the Liverpool pathway, starving people to death. For hospitals over the West Midlands, they gave incentives to management of hospitals to murder the old and infirmed that were in their care, to put them onto the Liverpool pathway, which meant starving them to death. How wicked and how cruel is that? Of a government, and equally of management. And equally they must have had doctors and nurses that were not professional, that were uncaring, to allow this and to procure this to go on. And the government was caught. Relatives questioned what was going on. Not before hundreds have died. And this is only one aspect of the cruelty and wickedness of government in seeking the death of citizens whom it's supposed to take care of. Now history, we come to this present aspect, and as I say from the beginning, it's very, 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 very serious. When the British government were defeated again by the British people over the EU, the government retaliated. Immediately retaliated. In calling for what they call a pandemic. Notice the timing. Notice the timing. Businesses closed down. People losing their livelihoods, their businesses, their workplaces, their work. The economy going west. The British government went absolutely horrendously flailed about and is still flailing about in absolute temper because it wanted the EU. It sold us to the EEC in 1970 to 71. It joined us into the EEC then, the European Economic Community. It had actually signed us over. It wasn't until 73 when that child bugger and murderer, Edward Heath, of the Conservative Party, the head of the government of the day, declared that we, through a national vote, had joined the EEC. And there was uproar because it was swindled. It would already been in paper form signed away in the 70s. That's why we in England, the UK rather, in 70 and 71, particularly in 71, it was a real good push to go into decimalisation. It's a funny thing because in 65 Africa went into the decimalisation, but not the coinage. But we were going into the coinage and measurement. Coinage and measurement. The government had already sold us out and were preparing us for 73 when they could openly declare. And the people just went nuts, absolutely crazy in this country, declaring we'd never voted to join the EEC, and it became so great that in 74-75 there was a call for a second national election over the issue